पार्थाय प्रतिबोधितां भगवता नारायणेन स्वयं व्यासेन ग्रथितां पुराणमुनिना मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामृतवर्षिणीं भगवतीम् अष्टादशाध्यायिनीम् अम्ब त्वामनुसन्दधामि भगवद्गीते भवद्वेषिणीम् वसुदेवसुतं देवं कंसचाणूरमर्दनं देवकी परमानन्दं कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुं मूकं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुं लङ्घयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे Paramanandamaadhavam. By the infinite grace of Lord Krishna and his incarnation Sri Ramakrishna, we are continuing to study the great text of Bhagavadgita. We are in the third chapter of the Bhagavad-gita. The context is in the fifth shloka, the verse of the Gita. Krishna says nobody can remain actionless, without action, even for a fraction of second. Nahi kaschit kshanamapi jatu tishtati akarma krutu. Ever a movement cannot be spent without doing any work, because action is something very natural to every being. Movement of the limbs, movement of the eyes, and also even the heartbeat is something called action. One cannot remain even for a second, even for a fraction of second. So the reason is given in the next part of the verse. Because everyone is impelled by Prakriti Jai Gunaihi. So there is something called Prakriti. Prakriti is the origin of the whole universe, all its actions and all that. So in Sankhya philosophy, the whole universe, the whole existence is classified into two categories. One is the Prakriti and another is the Purusha. The equanimity in that Prakriti is the nature is called the Prakriti. It leads to Vikruti, the disturbance. The disturbance or the evolution of Prakriti is called Vikruti, that is the source of this world, according to Sankhya philosophy. So Prakriti Jaihi Gunaihi means the gunas, the sattva, rajas and the tamas, born out of the Prakriti. The Prakriti guna, the sattva, rajas and tamas, will impel everyone to do actions. So as if he is swayed over by the Prakriti, avashaha, there is no other way for a human being but to act, because one's body, mind, etc. are made up of the Prakriti guna, sattva, rajas and tamas. Though Krishna says here, the gunas, sattva, rajas and tamas are produced by Prakriti, the Prakriti is nothing but the sattva, rajas and tamas itself. Sattva, rajas, tamas are the constituents of the Prakriti. It is Prakriti which is full of action according to Sankhya philosophy. Atman is actionless, but the Atman in the state of ignorance, as if he is controlled by the Prakriti. Avashaha, he has no freedom at all. That the state of freedom is called the moksha in Indian context. The state of bondage is called avasha. No vasha, avasha. As if he is controlled, as if he is under the bondage. That is called bondage. In every Indian philosophical school, the bondage is bondage of the Prakriti. But in practicality, bondage of the body and mind. If I think I am the body and I do according to the body needs, my actions are centered on keeping the body alive. I do everything to nurture the body. That is the bondage. So every being has no freedom at all. He is avashaha, he is controlled. He is as if he is in bondage by the prakriti jaihi gunaihi. The gunas arising from prakriti, that is sattva, rajas and the tamas. So this is what we study in the shloka number 5. Then Krishna continues, there are two cases here. There are the common people or very ordinary people. The ordinary people are of two kinds here. Jnani is one who is beyond them all. Jnani rests himself in his own Atman, finds happiness in his own Atman. He has no control of the Prakriti. He is not controlled by the Prakriti. He is not bound by the Prakriti. But the ordinary man, the two classifications Krishna makes here. The first classification is mithyachara, hypocrite. One who is hypocrite, one who doesn't follow the injunctions of the dharma or the shastra is called the hypocrite here. Karmendriyani, he controls karmendriyas. Karmendriyas we know mainly used for walking, talking, etc., hands, limbs, etc., and he tries to control. That means he sits idle, but in his mind he thinks about the worlds of objects. He does not control the mind. He does not control the jnanendriyas through the mind. As I told you in the previous class, the controlling happens in the mind. Whether you control jnanendriyas or the karmendriyas, the controlling happens in the mind. That's why Krishna adds an adjective, controlling in the mind, and he is not controlling in the mind. Manasa smaran. He always remembers what he has seen, what he has heard, and what he has to eat, etc. Though outwardly he controls his karmendriyas. That is, outwardly he is actionless, but inwardly he is full of desires. That is the state of mind of a hypocrite. Indriyarthan smaran. So indriyas are the senses. The objects are indriyarthas. Suppose if I have an eye, what form I see is indriyartha. Indriya here is the eye, the artha, the sense objects is the indriyartha. So I see an object, I see a beautiful form, I am attracted towards it, I go to my house and sit there. I think I have controlled my mind, I have not controlled it. I am thinking about that beautiful form even in my house. That means in the mind I am thinking about that object, but outwardly I seems to be controlling. What I have controlled is only karmendriyas. The beautiful idea here is controlling karmendriyas is not the real control. Controlling jnanendriyas with the mind is the only control, real control. What we should aim at is the real control of the mind, control of the jnanendriyas through the mind. But we cannot help seeing, we cannot help hearing, we cannot help touching, but we can control that objects, desire for the objects through the mind. The desire for the objects is the cause of all the misery. Seeing, touching is not the cause of the problem, but the development of desire is the problem. Krishna has already dealt with that in the second chapter. Dhyayato Vishayan Pumsaha Sangasteshu Upajayate. So the Sangha, the attachment, comes from thinking about the objects. I go to market, I see hundreds of things and come back to home, and out of hundreds of things I have seen, I have touched, I have heard, only few things attract me. I go on munching about them, thinking about them, and that is the cause of desire. Sangha sanjayate kamaha, and that will lead to a kind of evil attitude on my part. That will lead to disastrous effects, and the life will be in vain, life will be destroyed. That is how Krishna explains psychologically how the mind gets degraded and how life becomes very disastrous, and one becomes crazy for the worldly objects. So here Krishna gives a beautiful summary of what happens to a hypocrite. He controls the karmendriya. He doesn't go to the market. He doesn't go outside. But he thinks of the outside objects in the mind, and he cannot control the jnanendriyas. What he has seen through the jnanendriyas, he remembers, he tries to remember by remembering again and again, contemplating on them, and he will get the sangha or the attachment. So these are all the psychological effects. So what is the lesson we have to derive from the teaching of Krishna? It is not important for us, it is not at all necessary for us to go out of this society, to go away from the society and live a hermit's life. It is for a few people of higher caliber, those who can live such a life. But what we can do is try to control the mind and try to limit the desires. Let us freely mix with the people, but try to be unattached. This is the buzzword, this is the central teaching of the Gita. We will understand this concept fully when we study the next sloka. Yastu indriyani manasa niyamya arabhate arjuna karmendriyaihi karma yogam asaktasya vishishyate. So in contrast to that, a common man, so the hypocrite, one who is common man, a mithyachara is told, and Krishna says he is deluded, vimudhatma, because he thinks he is controlling the body and mind. He is not controlling the body and mind, he is completely deluded, full of desires, full of ignorance. In contrast to that, one who has not yet realized jnana, he is also a common man, but very sincere person. He follows the teachings of the Gita and other Shastras. What he does is, what is Krishna's intention? Every one of us to follow this path is, one should control the jnanendriyas through the mind. Krishna is not prohibiting us to go and see, hear, etc. You cannot but see. You cannot avoid seeing the things. You cannot avoid mixing with the people. You cannot avoid interacting with the external world. But what you have see, what you hear, what you touch, through indriyas, let us not get attached to that. Let us not think about it again and again. Let us not to remember it in your mind. Experience happens only once. You see a beautiful form only once. But the desire comes when you go on thinking about it. That's what Krishna says, dhyayato vishayan pumtaha, etc. So here, indriyani manasa niyamya. The traditional rendering or the understanding of this shloka is very clear. There he tries to control the karmendriyas, and a hypocrite, he couldn't control the jnanendriyas. What he has got information from jnanendriya, he is thinking over it, and such a person is a deluded person, and he is called the mithyachari. the hypocrite. In contrast to that, this person is performing karma yoga. Karmendriyaihi karma yogam arabhate. He performs. So his action is not just doing action as a common man does, but his actions have been transformed into karma yoga. And that is the subject of the third chapter. And Krishna explains further what is karma yoga is. But the beginning of the karma yoga happens only when we are able to control our jnanendriyas through the mind. Mind is very important here. So, very beautifully we can contrast, we can derive a contrast between these two states of mind. There he has controlled the karma indriyas and has not controlled the jnanendriyas in his mind. And such a person is called hypocrite. Here he has controlled the jnanendriyas and he has controlled his desires. He has not attached to the things of the world, those he is interacting with them. But karmendriyas, he is doing what is called in Krishna's word karma yoga. Then what is karma yoga? Is there any difference between karma and the yoga? So we can have two kinds of definition. Karmasya yoga or karma eva yoga. But karmasya yoga is not correct. Karmasya yoga, yoga of the karma, it is not right. But when you say yoga of the karma, we make a distinction between the karma and the yoga, as if yoga is different and the karma is different. According to the tradition, according to the correct understanding, karma itself is the yoga. You are not doing anything other than the karma in karma yoga. I do a work in the factory, I continue to do work in the factory. I have transformed that very work in the factory into yoga with detached spirit, with an offering to God. I do all action and that will become the karma yoga. So the karma eva yoga, karma itself is the yoga, is the correct understanding and the traditional understanding of the karma yoga. And the crux of that karma yoga is asaktaha. This is the asakti is, Sanskrit is a wonderful language. When you say sakti, it is desire. One who has desire is saktaha. Sakti is desire, craving for something. But when you say asakti, asakti is divide of the sakti, that is desire. When you say once again you add another asakti, once again it will become desire. Asaktaha is one who is with desires. Krishna uses the term here asaktaha, one who is without attachment. Attachment breeds to kama. Simply seeing and hearing will not generate kama or the desire in us. As I told you repeatedly, because I am emphasizing that we have to recollect it again and again in our mind. After coming back from the market, I recollect some beautiful things I have seen in the market again and again. Dhyayato vishayan. That will create the attachment. Dhyayato vishayan pumsaha sangasteshu upajayate. And sangat, by sanga, kamat grahayate. This is the origin of the kama. This is how the desires are generated in the mind. So one who has stopped that process, yes, he has mixed with everyone and he has interacted with the external world. He is doing his job wherever he is put. He is very wonderfully, efficiently, and he seems to be no better than the other person externally. He is not a special person at all. When you see from the external point of view, but internally some transformation has taken in him. He is doing his work but with a detached spirit, detached attitude. How to get detachment, that we will read in the after one shloka. Before that, Krishna takes up another question. What kind of work I have to do? Is there any special work I have to do? Is a special kind of work? Or should I come to Ramakrishna Ashrama and do only volunteer service here? Or or should I continue to do my duties? And these are all the questions that Krishna has to answer, because the Bhagavad Gita is not for only sannyasis. Bhagavad Gita is for the common people like you and me. So Krishna answers this question in the next sloka. Niyatam kuru karmatvam karma jyayo hi akarmanaha sharira yatra pichate na prasiddhed akarmanaha. Once again Krishna emphasizes the performance of action. You do action, but do niyata karma. This is a very important teaching, often unnoticed by many commentators and the translators. What is niyata? Niyata here is regulatory karma. Some karmas are prescribed in the Vedas as the niyata karma or the nitya karma. And of course, in fact, there are three kinds of karma. One is the kamya karma, another is nimitta karma, and the third one is the niyata karma or the nitya karma. The difference of them we have to know very carefully. What is kamya karma? I have a desire. In order to fulfill the desire, I endeavor something, I do something that is called kamya karma. There the desire is the cause of the action. Without desire, that action doesn't take place. In the olden days, people wanted to go to heaven. They would perform an yajna for that very specific purpose, and that is kamya karma. That yajna or yaga is a kamya karma. Suppose you want to earn money or you want to buy a house, and you do some action, you work very hard, you take up extra jobs, and that is the kamya karma. That kamya karma is not a spiritual path according to the teachings of the Gita. If you perform only kamya karma, it will take you away from the God, because your mind is only after the desired objects, and a lot of psychology is involved here in the teachings of the Gita. So full of psychology. You see, when I love something, I go after it and I work for it. I always want to keep that. Shankaracharya says, yoga kshema. The whole life is spent on yoga and the kshema. Collecting, always working, always craving for the things and working for them. And after collecting them, after having them, our worries are centered on keeping them safe. If I earn money, my worry is to keep the money safe, and I have to put in the bank, and I have to see that it grows over the time. So the worries, first worry is, first preliminary worry or the primary worry is to earn something, and secondary worry is to keep them safe and grow, and the whole life is full of worries. That is what is called yoga kshema according to Shankaracharya. Here the kamya karma creates desires. Without desire there cannot be any kamya karma. But one desire doesn't stop the karma. Secondary desires, tertiary desires, following desires, desires after desires will continue us to do karma again and again and again. The whole life is spent on only pursuing after the desired objects, one after the another. There is no end for it. That is why kamya karma is not prescribed for the spiritual aspirants. Let common people go after that. Even karma kanda portion of the Vedas are meant for those people who pursue wealth and the heaven. That is mean at least through right path, dharma, pursue the wealth and the heaven. It is not bad. But for spiritually oriented people, for the seekers of God, kamya karma is not a good path. One should try to avoid it. So this is what is called a kamya karma. The second type of karma is nimitta karma. Suppose there is an occasion, marriage is an occasion, or upanayanam is an occasion. So you do actions at that particular moment for a particular cause. That is what is called a nimitta karma. That is also we should not overburden ourselves with those kind of actions. That is also binds us to samsara. We have to try to avoid them as far as possible, minimize as far as possible. If we are spiritual seekers, if we are on the path of the God. So for the spiritual aspirants, kamya karma is absolutely rejected. It is not advisable to do kamya karma, and nimitta karmas also we have to minimize as far as possible. And what we have to do then? And Krishna says one should continue to do work. Then we have to follow, we have to do what is called niyata karma or the nitya karma. And what is nitya karma? Suppose a Brahmin do sandhya karma, sandhya vandana, and other people also do some kind of puja. And if you do it regularly, regulatory karma, these actions do not have results. If you don't do it, there will be defects. That defect is called pratyavaya. If you don't your regular duties, there will be defect and you will incur sin. And if you do it, there will be no result. That is what the tradition says. But Shankaracharya says even the regular karmas will have an effect. That discussion we are not into that now, as of now. What Krishna says clearly is, in order to prepare ourselves to do karma yoga, one should do niyata karma prominently. It is not that you should do only niyata karma, but engage yourself mainly in the niyata karma or the regulatory work, where there is no effect or the results. They are not kamya karmas. You have no desires, and they are not occasion karmas also, but they are to be done. Mandatory karmas, you can call it. You have to go to the factory and work. You have to go to the office and work. You have to go to school and teach. You have to go to workplace and do the work. You have to travel. We have to do hundreds of things. These are all mandatory karmas. We cannot avoid them. Continue to do them. That is what Krishna says when in this shloka, niyatam kuru karmatvam, because karma jyayohi akarmanaha. Not doing karma is inferior. Doing karma is superior. Always. For the common man like us, doing karma is superior. Sitting idle is not something advisable. It's psychologically also, for physical health also. And Krishna gives a very pertinent, very practical reason for why we should continue to do karma. If we don't do karma, even the maintenance of our body will be impossible. Sharira yatra is the maintenance of body. Suppose if you don't do karma, and how you will maintain your body? How you will keep your family? How you will maintain your family? It's impossible. So, sharira yatra pi cha te na prasiddhe. So, your maintenance of the body, your maintenance of the family will not be possible. You cannot sustain yourself. You cannot sustain your family if you don't do any kind of karma. So, sharira yatra pichate na prasiddhed akarmanaha. By not doing karma is not an option at all. Always you should do karma, but try to do to the maximum only the regulatory karma. Don't fall into the trap of kamya karma. Don't develop desires, more and desires to acquire many things, so that you will be always engaged in that kind of karma and forget the God. So, do everything which will help you to remember God. Karma yoga is the discipline where you remember God and perform the actions. But kamya karma or the works with desire will make you forget the God. That is why Krishna says, don't do it. It's not advisable. Always do what is mandatory and what is your duty. Duty is something which is mandatory to us. It is not something forced upon. If it is forced upon, it is a slavery. We take upon ourselves the responsibility and we work, we earn money and we maintain our family, we help others, and that is how the society is maintaining, our society is in the state of equilibrium. If some people do work and all others are enjoying, the society will not survive at all. Everybody has to contribute. So Krishna says here very clearly, avoid doing karma with desires, desired objects. Perform the karma to the minimum. Confine the karmas to the minimum, just for the maintenance of the body, maintenance of the family, or the upkeeping of others who are dependent upon you. And as Ramakrishna says clearly, always pray to Lord to keep your actions or keep your duty to the minimum, just for earning money for the welfare of the family, to keep your children or the aged parents for their welfare. If you have more desires and you will be engaged more in the action, that will not be conducive, that will not help you in the spiritual path. So these are some of the takeaways or the corollaries we can derive from Bhagavad-Gita for the modern age. And this next question comes, for what sake I should do karma? What is the purpose of my karma? What is the paramount purpose or the objective of my karma? This is very important shloka in the Karma Yoga from the practical point of view. Krishna never asked you to give up any particular type of karma except not to develop desires, not to have the desires, not to increase your karma or the action, that's all. Yajnarthat karmanaha anyatra moho lokoyam karma bandhanaha tadartam karma kaunteya mukta sanga samachara. This is a very important shloka and a very beautiful word we are introduced into this in this shloka. What is that? Yajna is the word. Yajna has a great connotation. Yajna is a very important, very big word here. It has very huge dimensions, several ways of understanding it. Let us try to understand the word yajna and its different shades of the meaning one by one. Then the normal meaning of the yajna. What is yajna? Yajna is a sacrifice. We have seen yajnas, homas, performed in temples and even in our ashrama also, and there is a fire, and fire is worship there. But fire is not the deity, we should remember. Fire is not the ultimate deity. Here in our ashrama, we do Ramakrishna Homa, and fire is the Agni is the conveyor. Fire takes our gift to the God. That is the idea. Here in fire or the Agni is not an ordinary Agni. We ignite not an ordinary Agni. He is Agni Devata himself. Agni Mile Purohitam, the Rigveda says. He is a Purohita, he is the conveyor. So we give some gift to the God and Agni takes that gift to the particular deity. And that is the idea behind the sacrifice. So why people used to do yajna in ancient days, especially in the Vedic ages? The idea of yajna is there were no temples at that time. There were no ritualistic worship to the deities in images, and how to perform, how to worship the God, and that worshipping of the God, worshipping the deity was done through the yajna, and Agni is the medium through which we would worship the God. That was the idea of sacrifice. So it is a very preliminary idea of the sacrifice or the yajna. And next, the idea of the yajna, I am not going to tell all types of meanings and it will take a lot of time. I will give you 2-3 ideas. At the end, in the Purusha Sukta, we find the yajna. What is yajna there? Yajna is the cosmic creation. The creation of the whole existence itself is yajna. So here the Purusha, the great creator, sacrificed himself and he offered himself in the yajna, and that becomes the origin of the creation. That means the whole creation itself is yajna. Creation happens due to the sacrifice of the God himself. God himself sacrificed, and that becomes the creation. So this here we have cosmic yajna, the universal yajna. All the products, all the whole world, creation, the very existence we see here is but the product of that yajna. So this is the second meaning of the yajna. And when we, in the 4th chapter, we read the another idea of the yajna. Krishna himself says, Dravya yajna, Tapo yajna, Yoga yajna, etc., etc. So our breathing is also a yajna. So we have the prana vayu, we take in and it is merged into another vayu called apana vayu. So one merging with the another, that is a kind of yajna. So every action is a yajna, one merging with the another. And we do jnana yajna, we study, and we use our intellect to understand that itself by a higher cause. From lower plane, we transcend ourselves to the higher plane. We want to integrate ourselves, we want to merge with, we want to have union with the highest good or the higher God, and one merging with another, that union, that smaller thing merging with the higher thing, that itself will become yajna. So every individual action becomes yajna according to Krishna. When we read the 4th chapter, we will discuss it. But the modern interpretation of yajna, the social dimension of yajna, is what is important to us. So here, the society itself is kind of a yajna for us. We have to do work for the sake of society, for the welfare of all. My individual happiness or the pleasures are of the very inconsequential significance for us. What happens is, when we make ourselves egocentric, when we are self-centered, and our ego prevents us to become really happy or blissful. We never become happy because of our ego. We never become blissful because of our ego. When we become less egocentric, when we can identify with the society and other people with the more and more, then our happiness increases because we expand our consciousness. Now the consciousness, our awareness of ourselves, that identification, it is called, in Sanskrit it is called tadatmya. My identification is limited to body and the mind. And if body and the mind, it gives some pleasure, some happiness, and lot of suffering and misery. If I identify with my family, and that much identification is expanded, the tadatma is expanded, I become and more, my conscious expands, and I will work for the sake of my family, my wife, my children, or my husband, and that becomes the cause or the source of my happiness. But that is not enough. So the society, family identification should expand to society. Then I shed my self-centeredness more and more, expands my identification to the society. And society, I work for the society, I identify with every members of the society, I become more and more happy, more and more self-sacrificing, more and more selfless. So the simple idea here is a psychological truth also. More I shed my ego, more I give up my selfishness, more I become happy and blissful, and more I enjoy my life. That is why the people and the great people like Swami Vivekananda, Sri Ramakrishna, Mahatma Gandhiji, Maharshi Aurobindo, Subhash Chandra Bose, they gave their life for their society, for the country, for the whole universe, and it is they who enjoyed their life in full. They were blissful, they were very happy, they were joyful. Externally we see, but for external onlooker, it looks that such a life is very, very difficult. The life of a Mahatma, if we read, very difficult life, but their life, inner life, is full of bliss, full of ananda. That is why Krishna asks us to do for the sake of yajna, yajnartham karma. So, don't keep all your earnings to yourself and work for the sake of society. But in this context, the traditional meaning of the yajna is God. This is the highest concept of yajna. I have already explained 2-3 concepts from different point of view. Yajna as a sacrifice, yajna as every individual action is also kind of union of small things into something bigger, from individualism to universal, and that action is yajna. And so doing our become selfless and shedding our ego, shedding our self-centered, losing our self-centeredness is itself is an yajna. Working for the society and becoming more and more selfless is also a yajna. But in this shloka, the tradition meaning is yajna means Vishnu. Shankaracharya is very fond of quoting a scriptural passage, Yajno vai Vishnuhu. Yajna itself is Vishnu. How yajna can be Vishnu? In fact, Vishnu is yajna, yajna is Vishnu. How yajna can be called God? That is another question we pose. There are two explanations for that. One explanation is, as I have already told you, the whole creation is yajna. And whatever produced from the creation, all the human beings, the whole nature, mountains, rivers, everything is God Himself. So the serving the society, the serving the world itself is the serving God. So in that context, yajna is God. The whole universe is God. Isha vasyam idam sarvam, sarvam khalvidam brahma. And our Hinduism doesn't make any difference between the creator and the created. So creator himself enters into this world and becomes the created. Isha vasya, cover everything with God. The whole universe is God. So if you can work for the sake of God, that means you are working for the sake of the whole humanity. That is the one meaning. And the second meaning is, you worship God and we sacrifice, actual physical sacrifice, yajna, is for the sake of God. Yajna patihi, we say in Vishnu Sahasranama. Another one name of Vishnu is Yajna. He is also Yajnapati. He is the Yajna, he is the ruler of the Yajna. He is the presiding deity of the Yajna. So in the 4th chapter also we read, Brahmarpanam Brahma Havihi. Whatever the components we use in the Yajna are also God. And the one who is performing yajna is also God, and the presiding deity is also God, whom we are giving the gift, ahuti, oblation, that also is God. The fire itself is God. So everything involved in a sacrifice is a God. So when we take the yajna as our own life, whatever we have, whatever we think we belong to us, that is the God Himself. That means yajnarthat means don't do work with self-centeredness or the egocentric attitude for your own sake, for the selfish purpose, do everything as the worship of God, for the sake of God, live for the God, breathe for the God, work for the God. Everything you do as God as the center of your being, because you see philosophically and in really you see nothing but God. You breathe God, you see God, you hear God. Whatever experience is full of consciousness. We don't call any experience without its consciousness part of it. Consciousness means understanding, anubhava we call it. I am conscious of that. Wherever, whenever, whatever, I am conscious of it is consciousness, and that consciousness is Chaitanya. That Chaitanya is what is called God. So everything we should think and we should believe and we should contemplate that I am doing for God. And Krishna specifies in the 12th chapter, do work for the sake of God and do everything as an objective as the God. It is God's work I am doing. It is not my work. As in Sri Ramakrishna's word, Tumi ami yantra, tumi jontri. You are the maker of the machine, or you are the runner of the machine. I am just the machine. Body, if I think I am a body, I am just a machine. The Chaitanya, the consciousness, the God within is the runner of this machine called body. It is who he is doing the work. I am not the doer. So it is God's work. And the purpose of the God's work is God itself. There is no other purpose. Worldly objects are not the goal of work. It's a beautiful idea. We always think any action is for the sake of worldly benefit. It is for the common people to think in that so. Now we have been transformed into karma yogins by Krishna. While studying Gita, our actions will slowly transform itself into karma yoga. So now we have become karma yogi. So as for karma yogi, every action is God's work and the purpose of the God. Mat karma kritu mat paramaha. The 11th verse of the 55th verse of the 11th chapter of the Gita. That is called the very significant shloka, because both Shankaracharya and Madhvacharya declared that shloka contains the essence of the whole Gita. Mat karma krita, do my work. Mad bhaktaha, being my devotee. Without being my devotee, you cannot do my work. So when you do my work, then only that will become karma yoga. So often people mistakes karma yoga is different, bhakti yoga is different. It is not so. Bhakti yoga emphasizes on the emotions, the sentiment. Sentiment is bhakti, but the actual expression of that bhakti in the external form is what we call the karma yoga. This idea is beautifully narrated or explained by Ramanujacharya in his Gita commentary. He says karma yoga means bhakti yoga embedded karma yoga. You cannot separate bhakti yoga from karma yoga at all. You cannot separate bhakti yoga from karma yoga from bhakti yoga. When you say bhakti yoga embeds karma, performing all actions with devotion to the Lord. That is called bhakti yoga. And what is karma yoga? Actually doing every work with the sentiment, the great sentiment, emotion of the bhakti or devotion is what is called the karma yoga. So we cannot make any difference, we cannot make any distinction between two. So yajnarthat karmanaha, mat karma krut, mat karma krut, do my work, mad bhaktaha, being my devotee. And the purpose, mat paramaha, these are the three words. The three words we have to remember. These three words can transform our life into a great devotee of the Lord. Every word of Gita is very important, significant, is so valuable to us. They are the nuggets of the gems in the Gita. Mat karma krut, mat paramaha, mat bhaktaha. These three words. So, being my devotee, perform every action as my actions, the God action, with a purpose, objective of me only, the God only. God should be the only objective of a karma yogi. So this is the meaning of yajnarthat karma. So if you don't do karma with this attitude, what will happen? Krishna says you will become karma bandhanaha. Who is karma bandhanaha? Lokoyam karma bandhanaha. The people of this world will be bound by the karma. Karma bandhanam yasya saha karma bandhanaha. His karma itself will become bondage. In the case of karma yoga, karma will become the yoga or the path towards the God. When in the case of the karma bandhana, the karma will become the bondage. So how we will be bound by the karma? All are bound by the karma. If I have desires, I am bound by the karma. It is not karma that is the culprit here. It is the desire behind the karma that is the culprit here. We have to make distinction. Krishna never says in the Gita, the karma is an obstacle to the path of God and karma is the enemy or the karma is something evil. Never. All prescribed karma, sanctioned by the karma, ethical karma. So another dimension, that which is not sanctified by Shastra, that it is not to be, which is not considered as dharma, ethical, they are definitely will bring about the bandhana. If you say, I murder someone, I say it is my dharma. You cannot say that. It is not dharma. So, when you perform a dharma without desires and thinking that is God's work and God is the only objective, then only that karma will become yajna. And yajnarthat karma. Please do every action as the yajna for the sake of God. You are not the doer, it is God who is the doer. You are not doing your work, you are doing God's work, and the objective, the goal of your work is also God. So I am not the doer, God is the doer. I am doing God's work only, God is doing God's work, and what is the goal? The goal also is God. That is what is the yajna here. So yajnarthat karmanaha anyatra. So the people who perform actions without understanding the significance of karma yoga are anyatra lokaha. One who performs actions with desires and with lot of self-centeredness, selfishness, and such person is called by Gita karma bandhanaha. He will always be bound by the karma. He has to be born again and again and again because he is full of desires. When you die full of desires, you have to be born again. Krishna says, Anta kalecha mameva smaran muktva. If you remember only me, God, then you will reach me. If you remember with a motive, with desires, and you have to be born again to fulfill the desires. So we will be full of desires. The desires we will not be able to fulfill in one's life. That's why we be born again and again, and that is called samsara. Yajnarthat karmanaha anyatra lokoyam karma bandhanaha. In this world, all actions, unless they are done as an offering to God or as in the spirit of yajna, here yajna itself is God, as I have told you. One shloka, one word can be understood in different ways. If you say yajna is an action, well, very good. Good interpretation, good meaning. Their action done for the God, it becomes yajna. Here, if you say, I will do for the sake of yajna, then yajna becomes the God. So God is also yajna. Action done for the God also is yajna. So both the meanings can be taken here. becomes the causes of bondage. The people become the causes of bondage because people develop bondage and they become the causes of bondage. They are bound by the samsara, desires. Tadartham, therefore, tadartham karma kaunteya. Tad artham, for the sake of that. What for the sake of what? Yajnartham, already Krishna has specified. Please do all your action for the sake of God only. Don't do karma for the self-centered and for your own sake. Then how to perform? How to perform the yajna? How to perform the work for the God's sake? Mukta sangaha samachara. Once again, Krishna emphasizing the importance of detachment. I have already told you in the beginning of this class how detachment is very, very important. Dhyayato vishayan pumsaha sangasteshu pajayate. Interaction with the external world will bring about lot of memories, and one or two of them we again and again recollect, think over and over in our mind, and that leads to attachment. And attachment with particular things, particular objects, particular persons will breed, it will develop into desire. So, mukta sangaha, this is the crux word, this is the essence of the karma yoga. Continue to do work, but minimize your desires, develop love for God. If you want to have sangha or attachment, have attachment towards God and God alone. Personal attachment. That's why we make always we confuse ourselves. Attachment to God is what is wanted. Attachment to personal things, personal wants is what is to be avoided. If you develop attachment to God by performing work, if your work helps us to remember, think of God more and more, and if you work for the sake of God, and if you think or if you really do all work for the sake of God alone, then it is karma yoga for you. If you do otherwise, if you do for the sake of worldly benefits, name and fame, or to just enjoy the pleasures of the world, and that it will bind you, you will become a karma bandhanaha. So, Krishna clearly shows what is our path and what is not our path. Karma yoga is our path, and karma bandhana is to be avoided at all cost. And Krishna gives a universal dimension to yajnana. Now we are contemplating or studying yajna as an individual enterprise, individual attempt, individual pursuit after God, but it has got the universal dimension also. This yajna, the sacrifice, is not something contemporary to Krishna's age. It is a very old idea. These yajnas, this idea of yajna, or this very yajna, is created by God Himself. Saha yajnaha praja srishtva purovacha prajapatihi anena prasavishyadvam yeshavostu ishtakamadaka. Who is Prajapati? Prajapati is the creator of this whole world, and he is also called Ishvara, the creator God. What is creation actually? Creation is not out of nothing, as other religions say. According to Hinduism, it is already there was a creation. The creation went into pralaya, and it became in potential form. It merged into kind of kala jala, etc. That is called delusion. So if it is dynamic, manifested, we call it srishti, or the creation. When it becomes potential, when it becomes dormant, when it is become a kind of seed form, then we call it as pralaya, that's all. The stuff is already there. Out of that stuff, the Prajapati brought out the creation. That is the correct understanding of creation. Brought out the existence, brought out the people, brought out the whole world. He did not create out of nothing. So, Prajapati hi prajaha sruštva. He created all the beings. Along with that, he created yajna also. Saha yajnaha praja sruštva prajapatihi uvacha. He told his offspring, he told his children, the people, you want to multiply? Multiply yourself with the help of this yajna. So yajna will help you to multiply yourself. Anena prasavishyadvam, because it will give you, it will yield you whatever you want. Ishta kamadaka. Kama means desire, or kama means here object of the desire. So I want something that is kama. What I want is also called kama in Sanskrit. So kamadaku, it will give. It is just like the cow which will yield you milk. So kamadhuk, what kama? Whatever you want. Ishta kama, whatever you want, whatever you like. Though this is this shloka, and the succeeding shlokas have great significance in the sense yajna is not only limited to individual life or the individual pursuit or the individual sadhana. Yajna has got a universal dimension, cosmic dimension, the whole creation, the multiplication of the people, the progeny, everything depended upon yajna only. Yajna is a cosmic principle. That idea we will study in the next class. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Shri Rama Krishna Arpanamastu.